How can a film make you laugh at a dictator's barber and then quietly break your heart? The President's Barber, released May 2004, shows how Korean cinema turns political trauma into a dramedy, revealing the history that everyday people actually lived. The director, Im Chan-sung, is known for blending realism with satire, and some of his other works include Hanbando and The Spy. He's known to use humor and personal storytelling to reflect national trauma, and his goal wasn't just to retell history, but to show how ordinary citizens lived through a difficult time in Korean history. The main people starring in this film are Sung Kang-ho, the barber, and he is one of Korea's most celebrated actors, known for major films like Parasite, Memories of Murder, and The Host, roles that help bring Korean cinema onto the global stage. Moon So-ri, the barber's wife, is acclaimed for her performances in Oasis and A Good Lawyer's Wife, often portraying complex, emotionally rich women. Jo Young-jin, who plays the president, is best known for character roles in political and crime dramas, and Lee Jae-young, the barber's son, has contributed to Korea's rise in youth-centered, socially critical cinema. So, before I start discussing the film, I think it's really important to talk about the historical background because it really adds to the meaning of the film overall. So, this film takes place in South Korea during the 1960s and 70s, which was a period shaped by dramatic political upheaval that directly frames the president's barber. After the April Revolution in 1960 overthrew the Syngman Rhee, the country briefly hoped for democracy. But the May 16th military coup in 1961 brought Park Chung-hee to power. His rule lasted 18 years, marked by rapid economic growth, but also censorship, propaganda, and strict control over everyday life. In 1972, the Yushin Constitution legally cemented his dictatorship, limiting freedom of speech and strengthening the power of the KCIA, which monitored ordinary citizens and created a culture of fear and silence. This film reflects this atmosphere through Han Mo's world, where obedience, survival, and political naivety became a way of life under constant surveillance. So, let's get into what happens in this film. The President's Barber follows Sung Han Mo, a simple barber whose shop happens to be in the neighborhood next to the Blue House, where the president resides. At first, he's totally apolitical. He just copies whatever his friends say. He even casually helps with a rigged local election under Syngman Rhee, not really understanding what's at stake. And on the same day, his son, Nakan, is literally born in the middle of the street during the April student protests. As the regime falls and Park Chung-hee's military government takes over, Hanmo's life changes by a pure accident. A security official wanders into a shop, likes his work, and suddenly, this clueless neighbor barber is promoted to be the president's personal barber at the Blue House itself. From then on, we watch major events in Korean history pass by through his tiny barbershop-sized point of view, especially the growing power of the KCIA. Hanmo enjoys the perks and status and proudly repeats pro-government slogans, but he's also increasingly trapped. His family gets caught up in the paranoia. During a bizarre crackdown after a failed North Korean raid, people with suspicious diarrhea are rounded up, and Nakan is arrested and tortured alongside them. He's released, but unfortunately he's permanently injured, and Hanmo finally explodes, screaming that he is the president's barber, a moment that exposes how little his loyalty actually protected his family. The film closes with the bittersweet sense that Hanmo has begun to realize that how blindly he served power, but it's far too late to undo the damage. Nevertheless, it ends on a happy note with Hanmo and his son, who is slowly able to use his legs to drive a bicycle. The President's Barber overall stays mostly in small domestic spaces and uses gentle comedy to make the politicals feel almost casual. Korean history films like this often look like dramedies on the surface, but underneath the jokes there's always unresolved trauma, dictatorships, massacres, divided families. The message is that the funny, everyday memories of the 60s and 70s are inseparable from the state, violence, and fear, and that remembering both sides is an important part of processing that history. And this is a statement that is really, really echoed through the sentiments of this film and what the director tried to accomplish. So I learned a lot watching this film and throughout the different films that I watched during my time here in this Georgia Tech Film Studies class. One of the main things is that I connected this film with the others we watched, mainly A Little Pond, The Man Standing Next, and Taguki. I now understand how Korean cinema reframes national history through individual lives rather than official narratives. And watching The President's Barber with the knowledge of the historical context made me notice how powerful it uses ordinary lives to mirror Korea's political turmoil. Especially since the main character was just a simple barber who was drafted to serve. He wasn't a hero or a rebel, but just a regular person who was just wanting to survive and care for his family. And this focus made big events like the April Revolution and subsequent authoritarian wave feel intimate and personal. The mix of humor and tragedy really stood out, even as censorship and repression intensified through the film. The film really finds small human moments, underscoring that the ordinary people are the ones that bore the cost of all these political change. Overall, this was a film that I really enjoyed watching, and though it's fictional, it struck even more after knowing the historical significance behind all of the scenes. I really do recommend anyone who's learned Korean history or just wants a good watch of this movie to really look into more into the history and take a look at it.